Welcome to Forward with NACCE, Inspiring Entrepreneurial Action, a podcast that shares the stories of everyday entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial leaders, and the communities that support us. We hope that this diverse collection of stories brings you inspiration, inspires you to take action, and ignites entrepreneurship in your community as we make our way forward together.
Welcome to this episode of Forward with NACCE. I'm Rebecca Corbin, and I'm actually coming to you today from our offices, NACCE offices on the campus of Wake Tech. And I'm joined by our special guest, who is a librarian who is actually in our recording studio. So we're kind of switching places for the day, but it's a real pleasure to welcome you, Katy, to the program. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience, tell them a little bit about you and maybe a life experience that brought you to the career that you have today.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. So libraries are a second career for me. I started in music. So I have a huge love of music from my family. And I basically did music. So I worked for symphonies, churches, music schools, and I ended up working for a small private college in the music department. And they had an opening for music library manager. And I thought, well, that sounds really cool. I'd like to try that. And I moved just across the hall from the department office to the music library. And I just fell in love with it. I've always really enjoyed the library. I remember going there as a child. I worked there during grad school to help save money for college expenses. And so I just fell in love with trying to organize things so that it was easier for people to find the information that we had available. And so I talked to my boss about how much fun I was having, and she suggested that I go ahead and get a master's degree in library science. So that's kind of how I got here. So
yeah, and it's finding something that you love. And I know you talked about symphonies and churches. What other kinds of music do you like to listen to?
It's kind of a eclectic variety. So I mostly sang classical music. So I did a lot of art songs. I sang in some opera choruses. So I lived in Norfolk, Virginia, and so they had a Virginia opera there. So I sang in the opera chorus there. And then I did a lot of, I forgot what they call them, but it was like a church leader. So I would sing the soprano part and be paid for that. And then I would have solos on a monthly basis. And now my voice has really, gone downhill basically. So now I just do volunteer work. So I sing at my church. We have a praise band. So I sing with that. We did a fundraising concert for my mother-in-law who was running for office. And so my husband plays saxophone. So we did some kind of jazzy tunes, Ella Fitzgerald, Gershwin, things like that. And so that's the kind of thing I really enjoy. So I have a pretty large span that I like to listen to, but I mostly sing musical theater now and contemporary Christian music.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I find too, in our work, especially going through the pandemic, that, music really does have that effect on people's moods and the celebration. As we're recording this interview, one of my favorite Pandora stations is Trans-Siberian Orchestra, because I love it because it feels like it's the combination of like classical and rock and maybe a little bit of country with the violins. And so it's interesting, to think about different sort of influences. So where you are right now is the Founded building in Raleigh, which is a co-working space. NC State is there, and then I'm of course on the other part of Wake Tech where we lease our office space. So it's really interesting when you think about sort of the ecosystem of how higher education, business, and all of that connects. And libraries play a really vital role. In fact, we were able to get an intern for our office through your library. We just wandered in there one day, and that kind of gets me to think. I mean, most people have the experience of a library, but perhaps not a community college library. So tell us what's a day in the life of your job? Like, who comes into the library? What do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I wrote down just kind of a few points that happened in the last couple of days to give you a little bit of a variety of what happens. So yesterday I sent out an email. I sent out a monthly email to the employees that work at the Western campus, and as well as to the students that have visited our library, to talk about some of the books that we're promoting for December. So we celebrated International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So we tried to find books that related to that topic and do a display on that. We talked about some of our new titles. We also talked a little bit about the cozy books that we have. Since the holidays are coming up, we wanted people to think about some books that help them relax and enjoy the holidays. And then we also promoted a book, excuse my language, but it's the title of the book, Hell of a Book. And it was the National Book Award winner. So we just kind of promote some of the resources that we have. And it reminds people, hey, the library's here. And oh, I've heard about this book and I'd love to come and check it out. So that was one of the things that I did yesterday. I also helped a student find articles about race and socioeconomic status. I spoke with a new student about using one of our group study rooms to do their job interview. I also talked to a former student that wanted to use the library. And so I got to let them know they live in Wake County, they can use a Wake Tech library. Then I did a monthly report. I added a couple of books to one of my book orders. I talked to a student about how they were stressed out about finals coming up, and so how they can kind of pace themselves. And then I also purchased a couple of books. We have a professor that requested a book, and one of our staff members recommended it. So it's kind of a really big range. So we do purchasing, we do organizing, we do encouraging, researching, and promoting what we can do to help people.
Which is great. I mean, it's really, a service, right? And I know, you know, books are, just so powerful that people learn about things. And I was just sharing with you, or I was actually sharing with our producer earlier, when my daughter was little, she'd tell me something. And I said, where did you hear that? And she said, oh, I found it on the internet. And it sort of, as a mom, I'm thinking, okay, we've got to learn about, citations and where do things come from. So I know, obviously we all know as community members and parents and so on, there's a lot of misinformation that's flowing around out there. So tell us a little bit about, how do you kind of guide people, if they're students or community members that come in that are looking for information on certain topics? Maybe they're trying to start a business or they're learning about something. How do you guide them to be more discerning in information that they find, and even with citations? Why is that important?
Well, our college tends to use what we call the CRAP method. So you'll look at a resource and you evaluate it. So CRAP is an acronym for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So you basically look at a resource and kind of go through those steps to say, is this current information? Does it relate to what I'm actually looking for? So sometimes you can find a really great article, but it doesn't actually touch on the exact facts that you need. Then we look at who's written it, or where did you find it? So if it was a particular website or if it was a journal, and then you can look at the author, and a lot of times we'll just put their name online and kind of see their background.
Mm-hmm.
Then we also look at accuracy, and accuracy is sometimes difficult to gauge if it's a subject that you're fairly new to. So sometimes we suggest that you actually look at other resources to see if they match up with what you're thinking or what you're learning, so that you're not finding something that's totally out of left field. And it's difficult because as human beings, we don't know everything, right? So I was thinking about historically, we've come up with this research, and then we find out 10, 20, 30 years later that information is not actually true. And
Right.
so even when you find this website says this other website says the same thing, okay, that's a good sign, but it's not a guarantee. And sometimes we just don't have that guarantee. But I think it's just that whole keeping your mind open, branching out, listening to different resources, and then kind of coming up with what you think is the best case scenario and proving your point in that area. And then the last thing was purpose. So to me, the most obvious thing is if it's an advertisement, or if, let's say, a pharmaceutical is telling you how great a medication is, you want to think about that is not only is it that they want this research to work, but it's that they want to sell it. So
Right.
you need to
That's
be
right.
careful about that.
Katie, it seems like, the work that you're doing, and certainly the role of Wake Tech and all institutions of higher ed, is really trying to get to that critical thinking so that, the truly enlightened person. And if we're, like yourself, a lifelong learner, I too went back to graduate school as an adult and, had to really think about too my own biases, sometimes because they can be really good or they can be wrong, or they, but it's just really thinking, like teaching people to be critical thinkers. And I think that to me is what libraries do. The other thing, we had an interview earlier today, and we were talking about these various skills that students of all ages really need to learn. But, I volunteered. I said, I thought that one of the most important qualities was empathy. And I think being a reader and being a curator of different points of view and literature really helps you to understand, that the journeys of others, whether they're people in different time periods or people with different life experiences, and, getting that desire for really a love of learning. Now, one of the things we had chatted about the other day was really, our focus here at NACCE, the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship, is really supporting and fostering everyday entrepreneurs, if you will. Sometimes they're not high-tech businesses. They want to start a cleaning business or they want to start a hair care business. So tell us what might happen if a student or a faculty member, somebody from the community walked into your library and said, I need some resources on how to, think about starting a business. How would you counsel them, or where would you direct them?
Well, because we have the Small Business Center and the Entrepreneurship Director on our campus, we have an expanded book collection that focuses on business. So we tend to try to find out specifically what business they're looking at, and we'll try to find a book that is the best relation to what they're looking into doing. The other thing that we've done is I just wrote down a couple of sample questions that we've gotten. So we had some questions about pricing within janitorial services. So we were able to get some information to them on that to help them better guesstimate what they should be charging. We also talked with someone about trying to figure out what location would be best for them to have their brick and mortar business. And so we were able to show them one of the databases we have that kind of shows locations by NACCE code. So the type of company it is, how many are in that square mile or something like that. So just to give them a better feel of their competition, where they're located, where there's an opening, where there's not a lot of, say, doctor's offices or dental clinics, where they can think, well, this might be a good place to have their business. We've also talked about connecting them. So we've shared association names with different people so that they can learn more from other people that are doing the same thing. So they can do informational interviews or just network with them, find out what resources were helpful to them. And then we also talked a little bit about the competition. So the price point, that same thing, and then also what services they provide. So those are some of the things that we've done.
And all of that, sorry,
ahead.
I was going to say, and all of that is supported through taxpayer dollars and things like that. So they don't have to pay for any of that information.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
correct.
Great.
And with Wake Tech, so we have a couple of resources that are only available if you come to the library, some of the databases, but a lot of our databases are similar to what's in the public library. And so if you have a public library card, you still may have access to some of the resources that we provide. So with a library card, you can actually go online and look at a lot of the resources that are available through the public library and through Wake Tech. So I think it's paramount to get that library card, because you have a whole world to learn about with that one little card.
Yeah, so if someone, and this is one of the many things I love about community colleges, so if somebody's going through maybe a challenging life transition, maybe they have been downsized, maybe they've gotten divorced, maybe their children have grown up and they find that they have a lot of time on their hands, it sounds like the library is a perfect place to go to try to figure things out and kind of explore your interests and things like that. And I imagine you have students that come in that need assistance with homework, or maybe just kind of, one of my experiences, I walking in there a few times because we're on the same floor of the Wake Tech building, is just students feeling a sense of being supported or welcome. I mean, it's a nice quiet place, but it's kind of a safe space because there's not a lot of action, going on, and they can kind of get their thoughts together. And so tell us maybe like how many students, or what kind of students generally come in? Are they there to study? Are they there to research? Is it like a combination of all of those things?
I would say it's definitely a combination of all of those things. We actually had a little promotion during Banned Book Week, where we put out bookmarks of different banned books, and then we asked the students if they could go to the collection and find the book, which meant they had to get online and look at our catalog. So we're kind of sneakily teaching them about the library. They find a banned book, they bring it to us, and we give them a prize. And so we ended up getting students that we had never seen in the library before, and they would walk into study and then realize, oh, I can play this game and get some candy. And so it ended up being so much fun. And we had, I think, maybe 20 different books that were found, and it just built up their confidence, and it made them more comfortable to talk with us. And so we actually ended up getting more questions because of that. They would come in again with a question about a research, or we also have a tutoring center within our library. So they went to the math tutor and asked another question. So they just get more and more comfortable. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just, if someone says, I need to go to the library, they don't tighten up. They don't stress out. They just come in. Oh yeah, I know Katie. I know Jackie. I've met them before. They're a lot of fun. And so they come in and ask their question. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Jackie and I are trying really hard to make the space as welcoming as possible. We have a jigsaw puzzle out. We have a fabulous donor that gives us candy to give out to students. Right now, finals are coming up, so we have some games out. We have bananagrams out. The Uno cards are out. We actually have coloring sheets and crayons and drawing, like crayons, markers, pencils, so that someone can just sit down and relax for a few minutes, de-stress, and then go back and focus on whatever project they're working on.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it reminds me of one of my favorite books. I'm sure you've probably read this book too. The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell really, talks about sort of that access, and what makes a difference. And sometimes it's creating what you all do, which is that welcoming space. And I think about that because I think of just generational history, like your parents took you to the library as mine did, but just one generation back in my family, they didn't graduate from high school, they didn't have that experience, but they had the desire. And so I think to some extent, those who are fortunate, like, get it from all angles. But I know one of the things I love about being here on this campus of Wake Tech is there are a lot of English as a second language classes. So when I walk into work every day, I'm kind of greeted by all kinds of international students, and sometimes they have their children, in tow with them, that they're trying to kind of occupy as they're learning the language. And then you have another flow of people that want to get their notary license because they want to, have that maybe as a side business, and then some of them really feel strongly about, they want to be part of supporting our Secretary of State Elaine Marshall's little, army of people that are helping the work that she does. So it's just something that I think is quite remarkable, and I see that you build a sense of community just in the building, and just in being here. People that might be interested in maybe your career path, because a lot of people think about, I want to go into finance, I want to be a teacher, I want to, go into science. But in your experience, what kind of people are drawn to being librarians? Are they people like yourself? Are they all walks of life?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot of that, all walks of life. So I'm trying to think of examples. So my coworker Jackie is from New York. So she was a business librarian for 20 years plus. And so she's, go get her, get everything done. Let's get to it. And I'm more of a, let me think about that and I'll get back with you. And oh, let me look at that a little bit. So, our personalities fit well together because we're almost opposites. And so that works really well. But there's another person that was a librarian and now she's our site coordinator. So I really feel like it's someone who is thirsty for knowledge, has a fairly open mind, so that they're really interested in learning about new topics, but also wanting to share that information, wanting to help people. So I think caregiving in a different sort of way than nursing. So you're helping grow their minds, helping them open their minds to different ideas and letting them explore to find out what they're interested in, not just what their family is teaching them or their schools are teaching them. So
Yeah,
that's how I think of it.
that's beautifully said, because I think that's like a lot of, professions, you can have the personality that you have, and it's even the kind of work that I do, being a CEO of an association management. I'm not like an aggressive, like hard charging person, but I know how to get things done. I'm more of a relationship builder. But there are other colleagues that I have that are very different, like have different personalities, but and we kind of lean into what works, and we share what you have, like the passion for our work and the passion for making the world a better place. So Jackie, I learned so much today from you about a little bit more about what you do. And I hope that people who are listening to our program will, take the time, if they're in another American city, which many of our listeners are, or even another country, take that time, go into the library and explore it. And maybe they can search for a banned book. I would imagine that incites reading, because people start to wonder, why is that banned? And maybe I want to read that, it'd be something interesting. So, yeah. So thank you for sharing your story. And, if people want to learn more about your particular library, if they're from Wake County, how do they find you?
So on the Wake Tech website, there's a big gray bar near the top, and the fourth word in says library. So you can click on there, find out information about us, and then there's a contact the libraries. You click on that, it'll have all the locations, the addresses, and our phone number. So if you have any questions, you can give us a call. And again, my name is Katy Hoffler, so you can always look up my name as well under Wake Tech too.
Katy Hoffler. And so in addition to the library, others who might be wanting to learn a new skill, or even something like, I'm really excited about the culinary program that you have, and that's expanding. That's on my bucket list. I'm not really interested in earning another degree, but I am interested in learning how to make some amazing pastries. So, there's something for everyone at the community college, certainly the library, but a lot of really dedicated, caring folks like yourself, Katy. So thank you so much. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and that everybody's listening is inspired to check out their local library.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. And yes, please go to your local library. It's a great place.